Behind me is the Guildhall in the City of London. It is the bureaucratic heart of the old city. And beneath us lies the ruins of an amphitheater that the Romans used to use. Now, you see absolutely no evidence of this. But in its days, you would have seen gladiators, you would have seen slaves, you would have seen drama. Now, there's nothing. The only trace that remains to this day of this amphitheater is a black mark going around it. And of the Guildhall itself, this is not the first Guildhall. In fact, it's at least the second one. So this site actually highlights just how fragile our existence is. It shows that structures that we would consider to withstand the test of time, that they will be there forever and ever, have a habit of disappearing. In the same way, but much less noticeable, are our own lives. We live in a tiny fraction of existence. We will completely disappear without a trace one day. And I think we should remember this. History has a way of eroding any trace that it had of its former contemporaries. History just does not care. We tend to think that our lives mean something in the grand scheme of things. And they don't in reality. As I've mentioned in other videos, think of someone from the 4th to the 12th century. Think of 2, think of 3. You can't, or with great difficulty. So that's the thing. One time when I was traveling around in Turkey, I went to this Roman ruin called Perge, which is an immaculately preserved city. I enjoyed the sights, I felt like Indiana Jones. But on that day, something happened. I was walking around the city where I was staying in, and I saw a guy start a fight with another. They started screaming, they started kicking each other, but I've seen enough fights in my day to not consider it noteworthy. So I started walking, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw a third person, a burly man with a mustache, holding a shotgun. I immediately took cover, and soon thereafter, there was a shot, there were screams, and I still kept cover behind a bookstall that was nearby. And by the time I looked up, 2 men were gone. The third man was looking off into the distance, and I thought that the man with the gun had just shot it up in the air as a warning shot. But soon thereafter, this was proven to be a wrong conclusion. The man who had been observing off into the distance collapsed on the floor, and a crowd formed around him. Amongst them, myself, and I saw him die. Those 2 events drove home to me the fleeting existence that we have. I assumed that man, as he lay there on that particular street in Turkey, he hadn't considered that on that particular day when he was getting dressed, on that particular morning when he was having his breakfast, that would be his last. Neither did all the people who lived in Perge, in that Roman city. Did they think that one day not a single human being would either remember them or care for whom they were? Because their worries were very real to them. To us, they're little more than a footnote in a long textbook. So what am I trying to get to? At the end of the day, you do not know when your last day will come. There is a reason for why the Romans, when they had a triumph, which was the greatest accomplishment that any Roman could have, why they had a slave whispered into their ear, Memento Mori, Memento Mori. Memento Mori, at its core, means remember you will die. And it's not said out of a fatalistic vision of what is to come. On the contrary, it's said as a way to enjoy the moment. You do not know when the music will end for you. You do not know when the last moment will come. But in the meantime, in the here and now, regardless of whether there will be a mark of your legacy in the future, live a life that is worth living. So here's my advice. Before you exit the world stage, before you say goodbye, learn to be happy. Not by trying to please other third parties, but by pleasing yourself. Live a life that when you're 60, you will not look back and live with regret. Perhaps it might be more complicated than if you just held your head down, but I assure you, you will enjoy it immensely. So when you step off the world stage, you will have brows held high. And even if there's not a building left that bears your name, even if there's no legacy behind, you can say, I was here. I lived a life worth living.